الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Myself, Sayyid Iftikhar Ali Gilani. I am PhD scholar at ISTAC and General Secretary of ISTAC Student Society. Today, as you know, we have a lecture series, and today the lecture is 3 by Professor Dr. Waleed Fekry Faris, and the topic is ISTAC-IIUM series on spiritual, intellectual, mental well-being enhancement. And I want to introduce Professor Dr. Waleed Fekry Faris, that he is our Deputy Dean, Postgraduate and Responsible Research in ISTAC, International Islamic University, Malaysia. So I welcome you all, our distinguished professors, especially our Dean, Professor Dr. Abdulaziz Bargot, and all students and all participants. Thank you so much for coming here. Dear Prof. Abdulaziz Bargot, sir, would you like to please say something?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you, Brother Sayyid. First of all, let me welcome Professor Waleed Faris Fekry to our newly launched series of spiritual, mental, and intellectual well-being, a series which we intend to provide knowledge, ideas, views, and expertise on these areas of mental and spiritual well-being of people. This is why we are really glad to have Prof. Waleed with us here today, who will be talking more about the spiritual and mental health and well-being from the perspective of the Sufi Sunni tradition, in which the great ulama of the tasawwuf and akhlaq and zuhd and tarbiyah ruhiyya have contributed greatly to this aspect of spiritual and mental development. In fact, we have started this series, ISTAC series of spiritual and mental well-being enhancement 2.5 months ago. We started with 2 lectures, one by myself and one by Professor Dr. Usman Bakar last time. And today we are looking at this topic of mental and spiritual health from another perspective, the tarbiyah ruhiyya al-akhlaqiyya al-amaliyya al-sufiyya, which is in accordance with the Sharia and the maqasid of Islam. I think Prof. Waleed is well versed on this. I thank all the participants who are here with us in the Zoom and those who are in the YouTube. And inshallah, after the lecture of Prof. Waleed, people can raise their questions and provide their inputs and comments. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Datu Hamidun Abdul Hamid with us. May Allah bless him, inshallah. I leave it to you, Brother Sayyid, to moderate the session, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah Hasan al Jaza al Ustaz. Now I request our Professor Dr. Waleed Fekry Faris, the Deputy Dean, Postgraduate and Responsible Research, International ISTAC and International Islamic University, Malaysia. Professor Dr. Waleed Fekry, sir, please.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Thank you much, Brother Sayyid Iftikhar. Thank you also, Prof. Abdulaziz Bargot. First, thank you for inviting me to deliver this lecture in this series, this important series. And in this lecture, in fact, we are going to talk about main issues, because of course the time will not give us the liberty to deal in details on this topic, because it's a vast topic. But I will try to point out to some background and also practical ways that is in the Islamic tradition, in the Islamic Sufi tradition, that actually might play a key role in our mental health in these difficult times that all the world is facing. When we start to talk about why people are talking now about mental health, I think as people may say, sometimes people call it the modern world blues, or the troubles or the problems or the issues of the modern world. And we can list a kind of a very long list of what is going on all over the world now, but these are some of the key points that in fact affect everybody psyche and also affect everybody mental health. Number one is accelerated lifestyle. It hasn't been like this before in history, that our lifestyle is accelerated to the maximum. We are running to do our things, we are running to do our jobs, we are running to take care of our responsibilities, we are running to get better options, better jobs, better lifestyle. So in fact, this accelerated lifestyle, though it might seem to be a kind of an interesting and challenging process, but in the same time, it puts a lot of pressure on the human being. The other issue also in the modern world is the turbulence that's going on in every aspect. So there is an economic uncertainty all over the world. Nobody knows exactly what will happen next. People invest in this type of investment and then suddenly collapse. People invest in the stock markets and then suddenly collapse. People invest in real estate and then suddenly collapse. So nobody exactly know what is the way forward, or nobody can guarantee the best economic stability. So when we talk about economic stability, practically there is no economic stability. The same thing goes for life plan. Though many people talk about life planning, but this life planning in an uncertain world proved to be uncertain as well. So you might do many plans, but none of these plans will materialize. So how are you going to deal with this? Another bigger problem actually is increasing with the accelerated lifestyle and also with the moving of the people globally, is increasing dysfunctional relationships. We are talking about family relationships. We are talking about male-female relationships. We are talking about colleagues' relationships. So practically there is a trend which many psychologists and also sociologists are looking at, which is dysfunctional relationships. This is why there are many people now working only counseling in relationships, whatever the relationship is. This dysfunctional relationships has many reasons, but it's not our topic to talk about it. But it is one of the biggest trends all over the world in many aspects. And definitely this will affect the human psychic power and also potentials. The other also problem that we are facing in the modern world, we are talking about globalization. And with the globalization comes what many sociologists call it uprooted societies. Uprooted societies means because the job market is becoming global, so people are moving from one country to another country. Before, when people move from one city to another city, this was considered a big move, and he or she will miss their families and other things. Now we are talking about moving across the globe. And this created many societies which is uprooted, has no roots in the new place they are moving in. And definitely this has also a lot of consequences on the human mental health. Job pressure, this is also quite well known. People are talking about it. And it is one of the main reasons for the heart attack cases all over the world now, in the increasing job pressure. And again, also future uncertainty. Now people talking about the issues of the Third World War, and people talk about the end of the world, though there are no signs of this, but the discussion will come, and the trends on Twitter and other things will come like this, because the insecure feeling that we don't know what is next. We don't know what is next. So there is a big future uncertainty that affecting our mental potentials. And one of the last issues also that affected our mental health is the extensive use of electronic gadgets, which became a requirement now for any job. You have to be having your computers, your smartphones, and other things, and many things you are doing it on these gadgets, and also moving into the virtual reality. All of this is actually affecting our mental health, but sometimes we don't realize it. We don't realize it. So all of this, that's what we can call modern world blues. Yes, some of these issues might have a positive impact on some issues on the human life, but at the same time, it has a very serious impact on our mental health. Before we move, we need to define what is mental health. So when we talk about mental health, what is mental health? I brought here two definitions, actually, very contrasting definitions, and this is also a very interesting topic to be looked at. The CDC in the United States have this classical definition, which actually also the WHO and others will have the same definition, which is mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And it affects how we think, feel, and act. And it also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and to make healthy choices. This is almost a standard definition for mental health wherever we go in the official bodies, medical bodies or psychological bodies. The majority will have the same definition with addition or minor changes here and there. On contrary, there is a kind of a counter definition, which is also very interesting, because this counter definition, in fact, this is what we are going to see in the Islamic tradition. And it has been in religious tradition, in fact, since the beginning of history. The one who presented this was Krishnamurti, a very well-known scholar, who has lived in the United States for a while, and also an Indian scholar, specialized in spirituality and other things. So in his address in New York in 1936, he had this interesting definition. I will not read all of it, but I'll just stress on the importance. At this time, in 1936, psychoanalysis was the top of the topics that everybody, and even movies, drama, and books were flooding the market about the psychoanalysis. And this is a way forward to treat the mental health ills of the human being. And his view was completely different at this time. And his view that though psychoanalysis might have an impact, yes, but in fact, the process that the psychological approach, modern psychological approaches are doing will not really have a lasting impact. This is his view, will not have a lasting impact. And he said these methods may succeed in creating superficial effects, but they inevitably develop new resistance against the movement of life, which is an interesting statement, might be debatable, but it's a different look at the way of mental health. And his definition to mental health about the self-exploration, that the drastic change in the human being, the thing that will bring you to a kind of harmony with yourself and with the cosmos, is actually the self-exploration. So he said to experience the freedom from all the attachment around you, one must comprehend life deeply and discern for oneself the process of creating and maintaining ignorance and illusion. This is a very drastic, different definition of mental health. And we will look into, in the coming discussion, we will look into the Islamic tradition, which, as I mentioned, have the same concern that the main change in the human being psyche, the main change in the human being mental and emotional well-being will come from self-exploration, not from external impact. Mental health trends, what kind of trends now the statistics is going up with COVID-19 also. For the past couple of years, these statistics are almost doubled in many places. For example, people are talking about almost global percentage of 1 out of 10 having suicidal tendencies. People are talking that about 1 out of 5 will have severe stress, and 1 out of also almost 7 will have an anxiety disorder and depression as well. So we are having a trend in many of these mental problems, mental health problems. And this list is the main list that people are talking about. Stress, we are talking about severe stress. We're not talking about, of course, normal stress or a certain level of stress will always be useful for you because this is part of life to be stressed. But as psychologists are saying, if this stress will go above a certain limit, definitely it will create an adverse effect. Number 2, anxiety issues. Many people are facing anxiety because of the uncertainty of the future, uncertainty of their plans, uncertainty of many things around them, uncertainty even in their relationships, depression as well, because of the drastic changes that are taking place in one's life and also all over the world. ADHD, attention deficit or hyperactivity syndrome. This is also becoming very wide currently in young people and in adult as well. Suicidal tendencies, we are hearing this, we know the trend is going up all over the world, and also self-sabotage. Self-sabotage, which is a very interesting phenomena that many psychologists and sociologists are talking about, which some people will be very successful and suddenly they will destroy what they have done. Suddenly, without any clear reason, they will destroy what they have done. Or sometimes even people at the top of success, they will commit suicide. So basically they are ending their life at the top of or the peak of their performance. So this self-sabotage also is a very interesting phenomenon. And finally is the antisocial trend. Antisocial trend, many people are becoming more isolated. They don't want to socialize much with people, although their socialization will be only the superficial socialization, which will not entail any type of responsibilities or anything like this. And definitely all the commitment in life, any social relationship in life, whatever this relationship is, will require certain responsibility. So this antisocial attitude is increasing among adults and also teenagers and other people. Treatments, when people look at the treatment of any mental health problems, of course, like the golden rule in health, in any health issues, whether it's mental or physical, prevention better than treatment. Prevention better than treatment. So if we work on preventing these problems early in our life or early in our children's life, definitely it will have a very good impact. But sometimes, of course, we are facing trouble, so we will not be able to do this. We will not be able to do this. But this is a golden rule, as I mentioned. The golden rule in any physical or mental ill, prevention will be better. And this is also the Islamic rule that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, that to have a diet will prevent you from any problems in physical problems. So you should have, you have to look carefully at what you are eating, at the portion you're eating, so you will not have problems. So this is one of the rules: prevention better than treatment, and many other things as well. Counseling have becoming very wide across the globe. Many people are working in this area, whether they are psychologists or even they are trained counselors. They are not by profession psychologists or psychiatrists, they are trained counselors. With the increase of counseling, definitely it has an impact, definitely have a positive impact on many aspects of human being life. But at the same time, many scholars who are actually studying the phenomena very carefully, they brought to attention many other also disadvantages or problems. Because at the end of the day, the counselor is a human being, and this human being has his or her views of life, his or her problems also, if they have mental problems that is not clear to people. And also they have their own interest. They have their own interest. Though counseling, of course, the default is the person should be neutral, should be detached from the person that he is doing the counseling to. These are the rules. But the reality is it is a very difficult job. So this is why counseling sometimes might work and sometimes might make the case worse. And sometimes also the counselor might not really understand the patient or the person who is approaching him. Another thing also that people are working on is the medical drugs, psychiatric medical drugs, though it has been almost very widely used currently, but there is a lot of research on the impact of the medical drugs, especially psychiatric medical drugs, on the chemistry of the brain and how it will affect the brain after a long time of use and this type of things. And definitely there are a lot of restrictions from here to there about this issue. But some of these drugs are becoming now off shelf, means available to people without even sometimes medical approval, which make it quite problematic and might have a very serious impact on the mental health of the people. Though we agree definitely that many cases, especially very, very severe cases, the only way around is to have a kind of medical drugs. Finally, will come the idea of self-exploration, which actually the Islamic tradition is upholding. And I will explain now how this self-exploration idea is very important to our mental health and mental stability and emotional and social well-being as well. We use the word Sufi in the title, and though sometimes this will create a confusion, but I want to say that actually, in a very simple term, Sufism is actually the manifestation of the idea of self-purification that Islam brought to the humanity. At a certain point of time, people call it Sufism, but the core of it is, of course, Islam. The core of it is Islam. So whether you call it Sufism, you call it self-purification, both of them are okay. But when we use the word Sufi, because actually there are a lot of traditions have been built, like the Sufi Tariqa and Sufi scholars who have written on these issues. And now it's known as the Sufi traditions, And all of this Tariqa or writing of great scholars like Ghazali and like Abdul Qadir Gilani and many, many other great scholars, all these writings, in fact, is under one big umbrella, which are training of the individual, how to go for this self-exploration and self-purification. The Islamic tradition have kind of different levels on your way to God, on your way to God. And understanding this levels will clarify what we are going to talk about next. So the first thing is actually to carry out your religious rituals and obligation. You have to pray. We know this 5 pillars of Islam and this type of thing. So this is a kind of a ritualistic part of Islam. And then the second part with it should come with it actually to avoid all harmful. And when we use the word haram, I use the word harmful because actually everything haram in Islam is harmful. So this is why sometimes people will use the word haram as if it's something Islam just proposed or Islam put it alone. But actually anything that Islam put is practically as haram is practically harmful. So this is why I use the word harmful. So avoiding all harmful activities that will affect you. It will affect your physical, your emotional, your mental health. After we do these 2 steps, now we will explore our way to Allah, our way to God, our way to God. And the common term that is used in the Sufi tradition, they call it manazil, the stations on the way to Allah, the stations on the way to Allah. And we will see that all the Sufi tariqah, all of them will have different approaches to this issue. This doesn't mean that they are confused. No, it does mean that each tariqah in the Sufi tradition is actually a school in training individuals on the way to Allah. And when we have different schools having from the same source, which is the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, definitely will have a different ijtihad outcome. So some people will make these stations 7 stations, will make it 4, will make it 10, will make it 100. But in fact, all of them, you can see that all of them are correlated. So after you do your obligation, you have to go for this, your way to Allah. Ibn al-Qayyim has a very interesting statement in his book, Madarij al-Salikin. And actually this statement is coming from the original book, which is Manazil al-Sa'irin, a great, the stations of the people going to Allah. And the book is available in English and Arabic by a great Sufi scholar, Al-Harawi. So he said, Al-Harawi said in the first step on the way to Allah, he called it awakening, al-yaqadha, awakening. So this term coincides with all the religious traditions across the history, that the first step for the stability, the mental stability, emotional stability, the understanding of life for any human being is the awakening, the awakening. Awakening means you need to be away from the delusions around you, from the ignorance around you. And then you need to reflect and look carefully into yourself and into your relation with others, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and with the cosmos at large. Once you start to have this awakening, then you are on the road. Some people might carry the rituals, but they don't have this awakening. They carry the rituals, but they don't have this awakening. So this is why there is also a misconception among many among Muslims in general, or even among other religions as well. When you have a religious person who is carrying the rituals, and then this person is facing a mental health problem, so immediately people will jump to judge this person. Immediately people will jump to judge this person, judging him or judging her that they are not a true believer. They are not really a good believer, which in fact, a very big mistake, very big mistake. Why? Because Islam considers this type of the hiccups of life that people will go through. And it doesn't mean that you are a religious person carrying your rituals, that you will never have mental health issues, or you will never have physical health issues. No, it doesn't mean so. But having the rituals is you are doing your obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you have a kind of a physical issue, you have to go for the doctor to check it for you. And if you have also a mental issue, you need to explore why this happened to you. You need to explore, and this is the core idea in the Sufi tradition, the awakening. Why this is happening to me and why I'm having this problem. So you need to explore yourself. And actually exploring yourself is not an easy task. It's not an easy task. And the Sufi tradition will have a long time for the training for this awakening station. Why? Because we as human beings, we don't like to face ourselves. We don't like to face ourselves. We don't like to face our reality. So we start to put the blame on other people. We start to put the deficiency on other people. This is common. Why, for example, Imam Ghazali noticed this one. Why people are backbiting. Why people, one of the reasons for backbiting, for example, which is a sinful act in Islam, is you want to satisfy yourself. You want to satisfy yourself. You want to move the blame from yourself to others. You want to move the blame from yourself to others. Or you want to make yourself feel better, which actually you're not. You're not. So this is why people will tend to go for backbiting and other things. So self-exploration or yaqaza, awakening, is an essential station. It is the first station on the way to Allah. And it is the first station also for reaching a mental, psychological, emotional well-being. Once you start to understand what are the things around you, the attachment that you are that holding you, the illusions that you have in your mind, the ignorance that you have around you or in your mind, then you will discover that you are actually having a lot of things that you need to get rid of. And once you get rid of all of this unnecessary attachment, unnecessary ignorance, unnecessary illusions, then your road will begin to Allah. And then your mental health and emotional health will become more stable. And then on this awakening, after this awakening level, will come the clearing your heart and mind, which is quite known among the Sufi scholars. And of course, the great book of Ihya al-Din for Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, he talked about this in details. And people even before him talked about this, like Asad ibn Hasib al-Muhasibi and many of the great scholars of Islam. And sometimes people will associate this with the Sufi tradition, but in fact, this is a core requirement in Islam. It's a core requirement in Islam. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that all of us memorize, and the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. There is one piece in your body. If it will work properly, so everything will be proper. And if it is corrupt, everything will be corrupt. This is your heart. And as scholar mentioned, this is not the physical heart that we are referring to. It's actually the heart that Islamists talk about, the spiritual heart, as Imam Ghazali called it. So this clearing your heart and mind is one of the obligations, that many times we neglect, we don't look at. And in fact, when we look at many severe stress cases that people are facing, when you read some of these cases or you talk to people who are having these cases, part of it will come from comparison. They try to compare themselves with others. Some will come from envy, hasad. Some will come from unsatisfaction. You are unsatisfied of the life you are living in. So you want more, you want more, you want more. And maybe this more will not make you happy, but you just want more. You're just hungry and you eat anything in front of you though what you are eating is not healthy. So these issues will create a lot of anxiety, stress, depression. So this is why this is an important step. After this, Islam talk about in this way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to keep connected. Keep connected through the reminders, the continuous reminders. That's why Islam stressed on the idea that reading Quran daily is very important. Even if you read very little, you have your own zikr or own remembrance of Allah in a different way. And all the Sufi tradition will keep this in place. So any student of any of the Sufi tariqah has a kind of what people call wirid, readings that you need to read every day, or things that you need to do every day. So this will keep you connected, will keep you reminded, which is also very important. And then after this, exploring yourself in interaction with God, people, and life. And this is again a very challenging step. Because again, human beings, as psychologists will say, and actually before even psychologists, many of the Islamic scholars like Al-Ghazali and Minhaj al-Abidin and many others, they talk about the barriers, the idea of barriers. There are barriers in the human being. And these barriers will prevent us from exploring ourselves and from exploring our true relationship with others and true relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with life. In modern psychology, they call it defense mechanisms. So you failed, you put your failure on others. You don't want to ask yourself why you failed. You cannot do your job. You put your inability to do the work on other things. I'm sick, or the people around me are very bad, or I don't have a conducive environment. Like sometimes it's common, even it's a joke among small children in schools when you ask them why you're not studying, and you say, no, I want a place that is calm and blah, blah, blah. And when you bring a place which is calm, he also, or he or she will not be able to study because they don't want to study. Practically, they don't want to study. But they will seek an excuse. Or other things in the relation with people. You try to isolate yourself, and then people will ask you why you are isolating yourself. And your common comment will be, all people are bad, which is not true again, So the problem is with you. You are selecting sometimes the wrong people to deal with. You are selecting sometimes the wrong people in your circle, social circle. And also your life. Sometimes you are unsatisfied with your life and you put the blame on the circumstances, the people and other things. But in fact, your life is your decisions. What you decided, you are seeking the consequences. You are getting the consequences of your decisions. Definitely qadar will play a role, but this role will be limited to very small circle. But in general, our decision, you get married, you are selecting this lady to get married to, or you are selecting this, if you are a female, you are selecting this male to get married to. And if the marriage will fail, then you put it on the other side, or you put the failure of this marriage on the circumstances. But actually, this was your decision. So either you need to admit that your decision was not thoughtful enough, was not, or you didn't do your job, or sometimes something out of the blue, which also we need to accept. So exploring yourself in an interaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with the people and with life is a key station on the way to Allah, according to the Islamic tradition in general. You have to identify these relations. You have to put it into perspective, and you have also to be very clear about it. The last step, of course, scholars have a lot of terminology, especially the Sufi have a lot of terminology about this, is getting closer to Allah. Some people call it al-fana'at, some people. this step is actually very personal, and we cannot use it for any practical purposes. Why? Because it differs from one individual to another. And the experience that a person will face in this stage cannot be generalized, And this is one of the things that will create confusion among people when they read some of the Sufi books, for example. They will not understand what this guy is saying, or they will not really, sometimes you will not appreciate what this guy is saying, because he is expressing his own experience, which is a very personalized experience. So this one, we cannot really use it for anything. It's actually for reflection and for trying to understand the diversity of human being response when they are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another issue also, if these are the steps, and these are the steps in self-purification and Sufism, which is, as I mentioned, these are the levels that Islam, I can bring many ayat and hadith related to each step, but the time will not allow us to do so. But this is practically is the core of the Islamic tradition, and at the same time, it's the core of the authentic Sufism. I want also to point out to another issue that is very important to understand, so we can differentiate what we're talking about. Because after this, I will conclude with the techniques that we are talking about. People classify Sufism into three main dimensions, into three main types, I would say. Sorry, not dimensions, three main types. There is what people call practical Sufism, which is actually the core of Sufism, the heart of Sufism, which is the Islamic tradition that I mentioned, the 7 steps that I mentioned. So this is focusing on your way to Allah, your way to God, and your interaction with the environment around you. And there is a philosophical Sufism, like the writings of Ibn Arabi, Sab'in, other classical known scholars, and some of the writings even of Ghazali himself, not all of his writings, and many other people. So philosophical Sufism is actually a bigger exploration of self and cosmos, and this is more of a personal views, and personal experience. And this is, I wouldn't say it has no practical impact, but it has no direct practical impact on the normal person. It's more for people who are very much into this subject, or for academics who are studying this type of subjects. But actually it's not useful. This is why many of these books have been not recommended, even by great scholars, to read by the lay person, because the lay person will not understand this. It's a bit more complicated. It's a personal experience and personal exploration that might be confusing to many people, And there's another form which people call festive Sufism. Festive Sufism is the gathering that people will have for nasheed, for these type of things. This is a nice activity, but it's shallow. It has no really lasting impact. But many people will feel relieved when they attend such an activity and this type of things, which is okay. But this is not what we are looking for. What we are looking for is what is practical Sufism. Okay, the Sufi training now. The Sufi training, and I'm summarizing here what all the Sufi traditions is doing. The details of each one of them will differ. And we will see simply how the impact will be. The first thing is discipline. The most important part in the Sufi training is discipline. Discipline, how discipline will help me in my mental health. Actually, the first treatment for ADHD, as people say, is discipline and routine. So you have to train yourself to have discipline and routine. Most of the relationships, the dysfunctional relationships, one of the major advice by counselors when they talk about it is also discipline. You have to be disciplined in your relationship. You cannot be volatile. You cannot be impulsive. So one of the main techniques in all Sufi traditions, which is Islamic traditions, is discipline and routine. You have to be disciplined and you have to have a routine. And the routine here will always be in the form of this wirid, the hizb or wirid, whatever people will call it. It's different terms in different places. And this wirid or this hizb is usually a collection, a variety of Quran, dua, and some praising of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this variety also is very important. This variety and this type of diversity in the hizb or the word is very important. Why? Because we as human beings, we are getting bored easily. So we need diversity. So you cannot say that the person you need just to read Quran only, or to read dua only, or to make praise to Allah only. But we need to diversify. This is why the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ was like this, exactly was like this. Sometimes he would read Quran, sometimes he would make dua, sometimes he would make this type of things. So this wirid that you have to do it daily will help you to build up a routine and discipline, and at the same time will help you to have a reminder, and at the same time will get you a diversity of emotional experiences, a diversity with emotional experience. The dua will give you what you hope, what you aspire for. The Quran will give you a kind of a reflection about life and how the right position of you in life and the right position also towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other things also will help you to remind you to be away from the ignorance, to be away from the illusions, and to detach yourself from it. So this activity is very important. These reminders will bring two things which are essentially important for many of the mental issues that we are talking about. One of them is acceptance, and the other one is gratitude. Acceptance will help you to take away anxiety. Why? Because anxiety is because of the uncertainty you're facing. And the Islamic tradition will say, you do what you can, and then what will happen is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides. And in fact, this idea, this specific idea, has been a new psychological intervention under the name of acceptance therapy, which Islam has been doing it since the beginning. So one of the things that the interventions, psychological interventions that people are using currently is called acceptance therapy. And the bottom line of it is exactly the acceptance as we know in Islam. But how you have this acceptance, you have to remind yourself. So will come the zikr and the awrad, the regular one that you do every day, because we forget. So this will help us to bring us to always a reminder of acceptance. I do what I can, and then whatever will happen, okay, I need to accept it and move forward. Accept it, whether what will happen is good, I have the gratitude. What will happen is not as I expected, I'll still have the gratitude, and then I'll need to move forward. The other thing is gratitude. Gratitude will bring satisfaction. Gratitude will bring satisfaction. And part of the dissatisfaction and everything in our relation, our life, is coming from the ungrateful attitude that we have. Ungrateful attitude that we have. We have many things in front of us, and then we are not happy. We need more. And Islam talked about this, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, if for a human being, 2 mountains of gold, he or she will wish a third mountain of gold. So there's the human being by nature, the tendency is dissatisfied. What Islam is doing is to bring this satisfaction. Whatever you have is good for you. It doesn't mean that you don't have an ambition. Definitely you can have an ambition, but as long as this ambition is something within the limits, So acceptance and gratitude are part of the training, the Sufi training, in fact. And in fact, any of the Sufi murid or student, that traditional word is murid, student who will show a kind of a dissatisfaction with Allah things, or with dissatisfaction with his or her life, usually according to the tradition, will be dismissed from the tariqah, will be dismissed from the school, because he or she cannot really reach to this level, and this is very important. Another thing also is very helpful to our mental and emotional stability is reflection. And this idea in the Sufi tradition comes by what we know in Arabic as khalwa, or in English, seclusion. Again, the Sufi tradition will have a variety of types of seclusions or khalwa. Sometimes start from a few minutes up to days, up to even months sometimes. But the core of the idea is important. The core of the idea is important. And again, this is a very authentic Islamic tradition. Why? Because we have in Ramadan, we are approaching Ramadan now, the idea of i'tikaf in Ramadan is basically to have khalwa. And unfortunately, the practices that we are doing now is not really giving us this privilege, because the idea was to be in the masjid, but you are just alone. You just join people in the congregational prayers, but after this, you sit with yourself. You sit with yourself to reflect. You sit with yourself to reflect. So we have to make a pause. And again, this is another modern intervention that the psychologists are talking about, and also people who are working in other areas, that they call it pause. You have to make a pause. You have to stop for a while. Sometimes you need to make a pause and you think, where are you going? Why you are doing what you are doing? And is your relationship with others correct? With relationship with your Lord is correct? With Allah is correct? So you have to make a pause from time. You cannot just keep running. You cannot keep running. If you keep running, definitely you will make an accident. And the accident will be, here it's a metaphorical accident. It will cost you your emotional and your mental stability. So seclusion is a basic issue. And how you do it? You can have 30 minutes every day. You sit down alone, away from all distractions. You just reflect what you have done, what are you going to do, or why you have done what you have done, or why things are happening to you like this. You need to try to explore. This exploration period is very important, and it will bring you a blissful attitude towards life. And finally, also the training of the Sufi training is actually to have a detachment. You have a detachment. What do we mean by detachment? Islam stressed that many things, that the worldly stuff that we have are important to live our life, but it should not be the goal of our lives. You need to have money to buy stuff, to support your kids, to support yourself. But life is not to have money. There's two different roads. So basically, you have to be detached from this. Money is a tool, is not the goal of your life. The same thing we can say about many other things. People sometimes have the goal of their life to have a certain position, a very big position. And when they reach to this position, suddenly they will feel that life has no meaning, because the goal was wrong. The goal is not the position. Actually, the goal should be something bigger. The cause should be bigger. And these things are tools. All of this worldly attachment are tools. So this is why the Sufi training and the Sufi tradition will stress on the detachment from the unhealthy worldly attachments. And you try to reposition it in a different way. So once you know that money is not a goal, you will not worry much about what's going on in the economy, because you try to do what you can, and then that's it. If you understand that actually positions in your job is not the goal of your life, also not worry much if people will put you in this position or take you out from this position. It doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter to you. Just when you are in a certain position, you just yourself, you do your best. Then you will not have the stress that, what's the next move? When they are going to promote me to this level, when they are going to put me in this position, or blah, 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 all of these type of things. So these are the issues that if we train ourselves or we try to apply it in our life, in fact, it will be a good prevention. And at the same time, if we are having a problem currently, we need to go back to the step number one that I mentioned is, in the Sufi tradition, the awakening. I need to sit down with myself and reflect why this is happening to me. And what are my issues? What are my problems? And we have to be very honest in this type of discussion. Self-debate, we have to be very honest. And we should not put the blame on others. We should not use the defense mechanisms. We have to cross the barriers and we have to be honest with ourselves. So mainly these are the things that I wanted to touch on. As I mentioned, there might be a lot of other things. It's a very huge subject, in fact. And the Islamic tradition is quite rich in many things, especially in this aspect. And I would like to stress also at the end, the idea that we sometimes are very judgmental of people who seems to be religious, or they are in front of our eyes following the rituals and do the things, getting away from any harmful haram stuff. And then sometimes they are facing a mental issue. So we will immediately jump to conclude that their iman or their faith is weak. And this is a very wrong attitude, as I mentioned before, because our ability to explore ourselves will differ from a person to another person. And sometimes the blow that we have, the emotional blow or the mental blow that we might face from time to time might be a way to awaken. And there is a very interesting statement by a great Sufi scholar, Ibn Ata'illah, about this idea that the things that will hit you and you feel it's very bad, it's important to look at it as a way to give you the awakening, a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting you in a position to give you awakening. So we need to relook at things in a different way. This is what I wanted to say. I hope I'm sorry I tried to control the time, but as I mentioned, the subject is too large and I wanted just to touch on the main issue. Thank you much. And I hope if any other, if there's time for questions or anything, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, dear Prof. Professor Dr. Waleed Fekry Faris. And your topic is spiritual, intellectual, mental well-being enhancement. Very thought-provoking lecture delivered by you, and very interesting and very nice lecture and very informative. And I want to say something that time demand that we adopt the method of Sufis, as you said, like Wird and so, and we can explore ourselves to attract with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I am very thankful to you, and especially our dear professor, our dean, Professor Dr. Abdulaziz Brogot, Professor, all our professors, all our students and brothers and sisters and all participants. I think we learn it very much from Professor Dr. Waleed Fekry Faris. If you have any question, the floor is open.
I think if no question or any comment, and hopefully what I said was clear. This
okay. Yes.
Either what I said was very clear or what I said was very complicated. So hopefully it was very clear.
yes, inshallah. Okay, thanks a lot, Professor Dr. Abdulaziz Brogot, if you want to say something for conclusion. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Waleed, now you allowed it to be unmuted. Bro, Waleed, I have a question. I've been inside me for a few years now. There are two things here. If you go into the so-called primitive society like our Orang Asli, like the Red Indians, and even mashallah al-Arab over in I listened once in Jordan and also in Sudan in Jabal Karari. The intonation of their nightly gathering, right? It's almost the same. It goes something like this. Something like that, whatever language they have, right? And then they can get sort of concentrated and sense in that sense. And then when you look into the tradition of some of the Sufis, for example, the Rumi school, they are into using the mizmar, the knee flat of the Turkish. Back to the modern thing, we listen to a lot of the, you go into voice of the voice and so on and so forth. There are people who are telling that they are being into being afflicted by disease and so on. It's music that saves them. So I'm asking now, is there a direct link between our soul or our internal makeup and the sounds that we have? In the word of Faruqi, the sound engineering that people have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think this is also another very interesting topic. Why? Because the research on the music in itself, it's proven that music can change your psychological state. So if you're happy, people can make a certain tone that will make you sad. And if you're sad, people will make a certain tone that will make you happy. And we have in the Islamic civilization tradition, Abu Bakr Razi, a great medical doctor and scholar, actually he used to treat the mental health issues using music by adjusting the tone, But when we come to the Sufi tradition, there is a very nice quote by one of the Rumi followers. When they asked him about, sometimes you are using mizmar, you are using the, and many of the other Sufi traditions, sometimes you use music to adjust the zikr or something like this. And his comment was, we start by using this to make people in sync, until the music will be coming from their own self. Then they will not need it anymore. Which is a very beautiful expression, in fact. So this is a kind of an external factor that is used sometimes just until the people will reach this internal tone, the internal music, that you don't need to listen to it anymore. You don't need to listen to it anymore. Of course, I'm not talking about what the current music is. It's a different story. I'm not talking about this issue.
No, we got to go another, inshallah, 1 or 2 hours more with you only, inshallah.
Yes. Thanks a lot, dear Prof. Dr. Waleed Fekry Faris. And today it was the third lecture about spiritual, intellectual, mental well-being enhancement. I am very thankful to all participants, our professors, our Dean, Professor Dr. Abdulaziz Burgot, and brothers and sisters. And we are live in Zoom and Facebook and YouTube and so many social media. And it's a very important lecture and very informative. Inshallah, Allah bless us. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Fi amanillah. Please, we want to get a photo if our IT team is here, and if they get a photo of this session.
Okay.